The girl who fought the Taliban and won. The first time the Taliban heard her name, they laughed. The second time, they put her on a list. The third time, they sent a gunman to finish what fear could not. This is not a fairy tale. It's not a legend passed down in whispers. This is the true story of a girl who was told to be silent and chose to speak louder. A child who stood against rifles, warlords, and ancient hatred with nothing but a school book in her hand. Her name is Malala Yousafzai, and the day they tried to kill her, they made her immortal. It began in the lush green valley of Swat, Pakistan, a place once known for its rivers, forests, and poetry. But by the early 2000s, those things were being buried under bombs, sermons, and silence. The Taliban had arrived. They came first with words, promises of order, morality, religion. Then they came with rules. No music, no dancing, no women outside. Then they came with guns. And when they came for the schools, they said they were saving girls. But they were burning books. Over 400 schools for girls were destroyed. Thousands of young minds locked behind doors that would never reopen. Fear bled into every street. Fathers stopped sending their daughters to class, mothers stopped asking questions, and teachers vanished. And yet, in this growing darkness, one small voice refused to lower itself. It belonged to a girl not yet 12. She wasn't a rebel. She wasn't a warrior. She just wanted to learn. Malala began to write. Under a false name, she sent diary entries to the BBC raw, honest, heartbreaking. She described waking up to explosions, listening to radio broadcasts that declared girls were un-Islamic. She wrote about the ache of losing her classroom, the fear in her friends' eyes, the emptiness of hope. And people listened. Across Pakistan, across Europe, across the world. For the first time, the world heard the truth, not from diplomats or generals, but from a child. And that terrified the Taliban more than any army ever could. They wanted her silent. But Malala wasn't done. She began giving interviews, showing her face, saying her name. She told CNN, "They cannot stop me. I will get my education if it is in home, school, or anywhere." She was no longer a girl with a pen. She had become a symbol. And symbols make dictators nervous. So they made a decision. Kill the girl, destroy the symbol, and send a message to every other child who dared to dream. On October 9th, 2012, Malala was riding a dusty school bus with her friends, just like any other afternoon. Laughter, notebooks, backpacks. The bus slowed near a checkpoint. A man boarded. He didn't ask for her name. He simply looked at the faces and then asked, "Which one is Malala?" She didn't cower. She didn't hide. She turned to look, and the bullet struck her in the head. Then another. Then another. The world stopped. A 12-year-old girl had been shot in the head for going to school. For weeks, she hovered between life and death. The bullet had shattered her skull, traveled through her face, and lodged near her spine. She couldn't speak. Her face was paralyzed. The doctors said she'd likely never walk again. Some whispered she'd die in days, but they didn't know Malala. She didn't die. She woke up in a hospital thousands of miles away in Birmingham, England. There were tubes in her throat, scars on her face, a silence in her body. But inside, the voice was still there, and it was louder than ever. In the next section, you'll see what the Taliban never expected. The girl they tried to kill became the woman they could never stop. When Malala opened her eyes in that Birmingham hospital bed, the world was watching. Reporters camped outside. Doctors from 3 continents stood by her bedside. And millions of people, students, parents, teachers, presidents, were asking one thing: will she ever speak again? But Malala didn't just speak. She thundered. Because when you survive a bullet to the brain, your voice no longer belongs to you alone. It becomes an echo for the voiceless. The road back wasn't easy. She couldn't smile. Half her face was paralyzed. She had to relearn how to talk, how to blink, how to chew. Surgeons worked to reconstruct her skull with titanium plates and nerves from other parts of her body. Her hearing in one ear would never return, but her mind, her resolve, was untouched. In those long hospital months, she didn't ask why me. She asked, what now? And then the letters began. Thousands of them. From girls in India who had been married off at 13, from students in Nigeria hiding from Boko Haram, from classrooms in Brazil where children walked miles just to sit on a wooden floor and listen to a teacher with no chalk. They all said the same thing. Malala, you speak for us. The Taliban had failed. They aimed to silence her. Instead, they broadcast her voice across every border, every language, every age. And Malala responded. She didn't hide. She didn't seek revenge. She didn't cry in interviews or ask for pity. She built a movement. With her father, her first supporter, a teacher who refused to bow to extremism, Malala co-founded the Malala Fund, a global organization focused on girls' education. Its mission? 12 years of free, safe, quality education for every girl on Earth. A mission that should be obvious, but isn't. Even today, over 130 million girls around the world are out of school. Because of war, because of poverty, because of laws written by men afraid of educated women. But Malala was no longer one girl in a valley. She had become a storm. In 2013, just a year after she was shot, she stood before the United Nations. She was 16, wearing a shawl once worn by Benazir Bhutto, Pakistan's assassinated prime minister. She stood behind bulletproof glass, and she spoke these words. They thought that the bullets would silence us, but they failed. And then, out of that silence came thousands of voices. Her speech made world leaders cry. The Taliban predictably called it a drama. But it was too late. Malala had already crossed into history. She went on to meet the Pope. She challenged presidents. She appeared on every major television network in the world. Time magazine named her one of the 100 most influential people. And then, at age 17, while most teenagers were figuring out what to wear to prom, she won the Nobel Peace Prize, the youngest ever. She accepted it with humility. She thanked her father for not clipping her wings. She thanked her mother for teaching her patience. And she dedicated it not to herself, but to the millions of girls who still couldn't read the words she spoke. Because Malala never wanted to be famous. She wanted to be heard. In the next section, you'll see what happens when a survivor becomes a leader. Not just for Pakistan, not just for girls, but for a future where bullets cannot stop books. They shot a child, and in doing so, they created a leader. But not the kind who rules with a flag or a throne. Malala Yousafzai leads with something far more dangerous, an idea. The idea that girls, no matter where they are born, deserve a future, deserve freedom, deserve the power to speak, write, build, vote, teach, and govern. And the people who fear that idea have every reason to be afraid, because Malala is not a politician. She is not protected by wealth or armies or empires. She is protected by truth, and truth once spoken does not go back into silence. After the Nobel Peace Prize, Malala could have disappeared, lived in comfort, written a book, accepted the praise, and let history remember her as the girl who got shot. But she didn't want her story to end in the hospital. She wanted it to begin in the classroom. So she enrolled, not in a palace, but at Oxford University, where she studied philosophy, politics, and economics, the very subjects that shape nations, the very tools her enemies tried to keep from her. And while she studied by day, she traveled by night to Kenya, to Nigeria, to Jordanian refugee camps, to war zones and villages and cities where classrooms were made of tents and pencils were luxury items. She met girls who had lost everything: homes, parents, countries, but still begged for a school. One girl said, "I don't want food. I want a book." Another whispered, "If I could write my name, I would sign for freedom." Malala carried their voices like a second heartbeat. She listened, she cried, and then she told the world. Because Malala had learned a secret that dictators hope you never learn. One educated girl becomes 10, 10 become 100. 100 can topple an empire. But the pushback didn't stop. There were governments who told her to stay in her lane. Men on television who mocked her accent, her clothes, her religion. Some accused her of being a puppet. Others said she was too radical. Some said not radical enough. But through it all, Malala never lost her focus. She didn't want to be a celebrity. She wanted change, and she was willing to work for it. Her organization, the Malala Fund, began building real solutions, partnering with local educators in regions most at risk, funding safe schools in remote and war-torn areas, training young women leaders to fight for policy change, helping refugee girls access education in exile. She pushed not just for charity, but for policy. She challenged world leaders directly. What are you doing for the girls of your country? In 2018, the Malala Fund announced it would invest $10 million in girls' education in Pakistan, the very country where extremists tried to kill her. It was the ultimate revenge, rebuilding what they tried to destroy. But Malala's story isn't just about bravery. It's about endurance. You see, surviving a bullet makes headlines. But waking up every day and continuing to fight, even when the cameras are gone, that's the real revolution. Every time she stands before a president, every time she sits cross-legged beside a girl in a slum, every time she reads a letter from a child hiding her books in a plastic bag, she remembers why she began. She remembers SWAT. She remembers her mother's hands braiding her hair before school. She remembers the sound of bombs outside her window. And she remembers that bus, the moment the world cracked in half. Most people spend their lives trying to avoid pain. Malala made hers useful. She turned it into a message, a movement, a weapon stronger than any bullet. It's easy to believe the battle ended when Malala won the Nobel. It didn't, because the war she was fighting didn't begin with her, and it didn't end with a speech. The truth is, the war on girls is everywhere. It's in the bombed-out classrooms in Syria. It's in the shuttered schools in Afghanistan where girls above 6th grade are banned from learning. It's in the child marriages in South Sudan, the acid attacks in Bangladesh, the rape camps in Nigeria, the silence in places too afraid to speak. And the weapons? Not just guns, laws, poverty, shame, religion twisted into chains. There are rulers who fear girls with books more than men with bombs. Because a book changes the future. And a girl with power will teach others to want it too. Malala understood this. That's why her mission didn't stop at headlines. She didn't just want schools to reopen. She wanted governments to protect them. She didn't just want donations. She wanted legislation that made education a right, not a privilege. She didn't just want girls in classrooms. She wanted them writing the curriculum. She traveled to places most celebrities won't go. She met girls whose classrooms were ashes, girls who shared notebooks because they only had one, girls who had to study in secret at night, hiding from brothers who thought learning made them unclean. Malala didn't see pity, she saw potential, and she carried their names with her every time she faced the world. But behind the fame, the awards, the global stages, Malala remained the same girl from the valley, quiet, focused, never distracted by applause, because she knew something the rest of us keep forgetting. Girls are not symbols, girls are not victims, girls are not headlines, girls are warriors. And every time the world underestimates them, it proves her point. In 2021, as the Taliban retook Afghanistan and banned girls from school again, Malala stood up once more. She published open letters. She urged world leaders not to normalize oppression. She warned them, If you are silent now, you are choosing the side of the oppressor. She had lived it before. She had the scars to prove it. And she refused to let it happen again. But the hardest part of Malala's story isn't the bullet. It's this. Why did it take a bullet for the world to listen? Why did a child have to bleed before we cared? Why are millions of girls still waiting to be heard? As we step into the final section, ask yourself, if one girl from Swat Valley could shake the world with her voice, what are the rest of us doing with ours? Let the world remember this. They tried to kill a child with a bullet, and the only thing they silenced was their own fear of how powerful she would become. Malala Yousafzai did not choose to be a hero. She chose to be a student. But when the world came crashing down on that choice, she did not run. She stood, bleeding, broken, half her face paralyzed, barely able to speak, and still she stood. Because heroes don't wear capes, they wear school uniforms. They carry backpacks, not guns. They carry dreams in notebooks, and some of them, like Malala, carry the hopes of an entire generation. Let's be clear, Malala is not an exception. She is the proof that a girl with an education is unstoppable. That knowledge is louder than bullets. That courage doesn't wait for permission, and that one voice, spoken with truth, can outlive fear, dictators, and death itself. But her story is not over. Because the real question isn't, how did Malala survive? It's, what are we doing now that she did? Are we still watching girls beg for classrooms? Still letting leaders make deals with oppressors? Still standing by as children disappear behind laws, walls, and silence? Malala's life is not just a story to admire. It's a challenge. If a child can face a gunman for her right to learn, what's stopping the rest of us from defending that right for others? You don't have to be shot to fight. You don't need a spotlight to lead. You just need to start where you are. Open a door. Share a book. Speak up when it's easier to stay silent. Because somewhere out there right now, another girl is being told to sit down, shut up, stay inside. And somewhere, a boy is watching, wondering if anyone will say, "Number, she deserves more." So if one day someone ever tells you education is not worth fighting for, or that one voice can't change anything, or that girls are too soft to lead, tell them this. A girl once faced death for her right to learn, and she answered with life, for stories that never die, for voices that won't be silenced, and for the heroes history almost forgot. Like, comment, and subscribe, because the next story might be yours.